Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today we have a very, very special guest. It is none other than Rong Chen. He is the founder of Elastos, so we are very privileged to have him. He has experience in working with various universities. He has been involved previously with the Tsinghua University in cyber and intelligence economy research, but fundamentally he is doing very key research as part of something he's been doing for a 17-year-long project. Welcome. We are very excited to have you, Rong Chen. So
Thank you.
it's great to it's
Yeah.
absolutely great to have you on board. Thank you so much for being part of the social networks that we're trying to establish and support via for Neo and also the projects that are coming on board. Um,
hmm
Ron, you were talking just recently about some of the your background, but could we talk about the 17-year project named Elastos that you've been working on and how that started and what with the C++ research?
Yeah. Basically, everything started, as I said, my interest in operating system actually started back into the University of Illinois days, which were like 1985, 86. I was involved with designing device drivers or design a new operating system implemented in C++ somewhat. And so at that time, the object-oriented technology was new, and Unix was new. TCP/IP was new, right? And so people were kind of demonstrated great interests actually in all three areas. So we were lucky enough at the University of Illinois was trying to combine all three together.
Right.
Actually, it started that long, 31, 32 years ago. And later on, I went to Microsoft. I was again fortunate enough to be part of the Microsoft research kernel team, and we were trying to design a operating system for the Interact TV.
Wow.
Uh,
So, as a result of your involvement with Microsoft, Ron, what made you move across into your own field, into your own independent research project? Because obviously you moved back to China at some point. What was the impetus for
yeah,
that?
the only difference, the reason, actually, the key reason made me to decide to leave Microsoft and left for China was at that time, of course, we all agree on the common goal of design a service-oriented operating system across the network. But then there are two paths
Okay.
to the destiny. One is, of course, using the C# intermediate language.
Right.
The other one, actually, because at that time I was with the Microsoft Com team, which is the component technology team. And a few of us together, we proposed a C++ versions of using C++ to implement software as a service,
Right.
to implement .NET. So we proposed actually to do both in parallel because that way people have a choice. You can design application using C#, and at the same time you could design services in C++. And with the two of them, I mean the two spaces interact with each other automatically.
And so, Ron, if we move across into present day and we reflect on the 17 years you've been working on Elastos, which is incredible
Yeah.
in and of itself, that's quite a long time. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk blockchain for a moment. In relation to Elastos, how does blockchain and what attracted the blockchain technology to you? What was the key feature of that technology that suits Elastos so well?
Yeah, basically, we can think of it this way. I moved back to China to start writing a C++ versions of operating system.
Right.
So that basically divides into three incarnations or three lives.
Okay.
The first one being from 2000 to 2007. We designed our own bootloader, kernel, graphics. Like we basically we finished the smartphone from first line of code to the last line of code.
Wow.
We wrote everything. I mean, basically the power management, the phone MMI, the calculator,
That's incredible.
the phone book.
And was that predominantly
Everything.
running through like an Android system, or was that catering?
No. We designed a kernel. We designed a programming a set of programming APIs. We designed everything afresh.
Right.
It's not because that's from 2000 to 2007.
Right. And obviously,
It's
recently, when you announced its capacity to be compatible with the Android, that's quite revolutionary, current
that's
day, because of the.
then Yeah.
Because the C++ can run for security reasons, as you explained.
Right.
And it will run away from the actual blockchain. In terms
Yes,
of that's
because
exciting.
the first 16 years has nothing to do with blockchain.
Okay.
Yeah, because what it is we designed a operating system from ground up,
Right.
and then that project actually was supported in most part by the TDS-CDMA Industrial Alliance of China.
Okay.
So you could say that's the relationship with the government research funding.
So you essentially had the operating system designed well and truly before blockchain came along. So let's move forward to that point. And let's talk about your relationship with Neo. How did you come to decide on Neo in terms of utilizing it as a Neo contract for Elastos in the future? What was the thing that attracted you to
basically
Neo?
When about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I ran into this blockchain concept.
Right.
And I thought it's intriguing because we've been doing in the last second life, actually, we were doing industrial IoT OS.
Right.
Instead of a phone OS. The first life was phone OS. The second life was an industrial IoT platform.
I suppose that's where it relates back to Neo as well, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, please, Ron, but it seems like from all the research I've done in blockchain that the primary reason for enterprise to utilize it is efficiency. Because it essentially it is a much more efficient market because you remove certain aspects of middlemen equations, costs that would certainly be inbound by a central market. So when you went across to Neo, I mean, let's talk about that. Obviously, you had in mind a means in which you could utilize a decentralized model. But also Neo obviously is trying to benefit from it in not just a public market, but also the enterprise market as well. So was there a correlation between both agendas?
Actually, Neo helps us. Neo helps us in two aspects. One is that Neo actually it's Onchain helping us to design our own public chain.
I thought it would have been.
Elastos public chain will be the testnet will be released by the end of this month.
Right.
So actually, we are in testing right now, internal testing right now. We are deploying the testnet across the globe right now, deploying the servers in different places and trying to roll out the testnet.
That's exciting.
But it's then we're going to make a testnet available for all the codes available and roll it out in a few weeks.
And Ron, can I just interrupt? I was excited about your mentioning of Onchain because, as you'd know, Onchain is specifically geared for enterprise and for business markets. And also, it has an inbuilt system you'd be aware of called Ontology. So there's three entities, as you know. There's Neo, Ontology, and then we have Onchain. But there's a very clear connection between all three. And the thing that I remember you talking about a lot is trust. And when you were talking in San Fran, and then when I looked into Elastos as well, there's absolutely clear benefits to having trust centralized through the on-chain system or through Neo, so that you can then run out the off-chain capabilities and move it through all the technologies right through to things like websites, smartphones, that sort of thing. So will you be working with Ontology indirectly with your relationship with Onchain to house that trust?
Yeah, we're actually Onchain would be one of our partners because first of all, we're building this decentralized web. So then the web is not controlled by any single
entity,
organization, or entity.
Yep.
And so everybody is entitled to get their own ID without any intermediary permission, right? You can get your wallet ID at least. And then, of course, on top of the wallet ID, you need to get some kind of alias or the name easier to remember, for example, Google.ID or Rong Chen.ID, that kind of. So then they can provide services and people have an easier time to find them on the web, right? So and then the third kind of name is whoever hosts a website, they need to at least be KYC'd.
Exactly.
Depends on the regulations of different markets. For example, in China, if you want to do, we're actually designing something called a macro website. Macro website meaning the website without a IP address. A macro website could be hosted in your home.
That's incredible.
On a router.
It's incredible.
Because that's we call it a macro website. So you can basically we're trying to approach the long tail market. For example, if some author wrote only a book, the audience could be in just a few thousand.
Right.
In China, there's no way they could list it in Amazon or equivalent bookstores.
And Ron, would it be fair to say that because of the capabilities of Onchain, this made sense to me when I was reading more and more about Elastos, but because of the capabilities of the trust aspect of that network, that actually works in perfect juxtaposition with your plan, because obviously if you didn't have a mechanism for trust to be housed within, I guess, a blockchain frame, then what you plan to do wouldn't work, because you need to have that identity housed somewhere. You need to have that ID.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because otherwise, the only way you could do is the ID is issued by some kind of organization. For example,
like
issued
Google
by
or...
China Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, or Google, right?
Ron, how do you think Google looks at all of this? Because they're a fundamentally centralized system. So how do you think they're looking at it? Do you think that they're trying to keep up with something like you?
I mean, basically, I believe that's a complementary of each other, because we do need department stores selling merchandise, but we also need a farmers market, like bazaars, and they sell whatever they feel like on the street. Right?
But just in terms of technology, though, you're actually designing an operating system that's it's designed to be fundamentally decentralized. So that, in many respects, that's the counterpart to the Google design. So do you think that they're concerned or that they're aware of the innovation that you're bringing to the market? Because this is a 17-year project.
For me, we are more like a stubborn kind, and we don't really care about what Google thinks.
That's great.
We only believe what we're doing, whether it's beneficial to the world.
Right.
And so we believe we're on the right approach or on the right road. And also given a little bit back of another instance I ran into, because when you look at back, definitely there's a need. At that time, I didn't realize that, but I've been reflecting on things for the past 20 years. And the reason why Linux succeeded is because the internet, right? Because people want to interconnect, they want to have an open source, so they know the other party, or whether they got cheap source code, or whether they can believe there's no hidden agendas with the source code, and that kind of chips in, right? Eventually, like IBM, Intel, they're all like behind Linux and made Linux what it is today. So when you talk about Google or Microsoft, Apple, I mean, of course they are still strong, and definitely I think there's a place for a centralized market or centralized platform.
Right.
But then there's also a decentralized version, an open source version, because given blockchain is 100% open source, yet you cannot steal money from the wallet.
That's right.
And people have trust because of the complete open source, the openness. And on top of it, we're building a peer-to-peer network for, before it was for industrial IoT, and now we were given decentralized IDs and stuff, so we can build it decentralized peer-to-peer network.
And that leads into some questions I had for you. I suppose I can ask you now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But when you were talking at the San Francisco meetup, and Jed was obviously there from Stellar, many people, including myself, have been very intrigued by those partnerships. And one of the things you mentioned was that there's been a 5-year-long relationship or a project that you've been working on. And you mentioned, initially, I wasn't sure what it was, but I've since worked out it was eDonkey, the project that Jed has been working on. And I'm fascinated to know exactly what the relationship is, as are many, direct with Jed, the Stellar team, and yourselves as Elastos, because it's clearly this peer-to-peer network that's going to be a key component. So can you talk more about that?
Sure. Our actually peer-to-peer network started 5 years ago, because that was the second incarnation, the second life of Elastos, which was sponsored by Foxconn. Because as I said, the goal of it was doing the industrial IoT OS, where we definitely need a peer-to-peer network for smart homes, for industrial IoT. So actually, the reason why I thanked Jed was I don't have much knowledge of peer-to-peer other than I used BitTorrent to download a file, right?
Whereas Jed knows it all, being the designer.
Sure. But then, so we actually, even for that, for the past 5 years, we tried at least 3 times. We made 3 attempts because of lack of experience, lack of knowledge.
Right. Initially, I thought maybe the key was the speed to facilitate these things, but clearly it's more than that. Clearly, it's also, you know, the inbuilt structures that Jed's put in place to make it very possible to have a robust peer-to-peer network to run on
Yes.
Elastos. Is that right?
I mean, basically, we leverage many people's work. eDonkey was just one of them.
Okay.
I was just basically grateful for all the people who contributed to the open source peer-to-peer network community.
Okay.
So we could have the peer-to-peer video capability, peer-to-peer file sharing capability, the messaging capability, of course, the VoIP, the voice capability, right?
Right.
They're all peer-to-peer. And we are also, in the meantime, we're right now doing the final stage of doing a peer-to-peer version, a decentralized versions of the P2P network. Because if you think eDonkey and Skype, for that matter, they still have a central website. Because when we log into to Skype, we need to have an ID issued by Skype.
Right. Exactly.
And if we want to do a decentralized peer-to-peer network, we also have to do a decentralized Skype.com.
Exactly.
Not only the transport layer needs to be peer-to-peer, actually the website needs to be peer-to-peer as well.
Right.
And for the very reason, eDonkey project in a way went run into some tumbling blocks because of copyright issues and because of the liabilities they are holding, right?
Right.
Even though it's a peer-to-peer, but if you have central website, you're liable for
absolutely
material, the copyrighted materials.
Yes.
But actually, what we're doing is we are promoting not only the peer-to-peer features of the P2P network, but we're also promoting those small authors and
yes, because they can then get reimbursed or they can get compensated for all of their work from their home potentially, which is very exciting.
So which is that's the third incarnation, right? Because first of all, we as I said, in that meetup of San Francisco, we just thanked not only Jed, we thanked all the people who contributed to the peer-to-peer network.
And Ron,
Jed happened to be on the stage, and he's one of the known figure for that.
I think that's what intrigued many of us, because obviously there was a major promotion of 3 companies and Stellar was one. So many people were investigating the direct correlation between yourself and Stellar. Now,
when we talk about Stellar as a business,
right?
I mean, basically, we realized that not only for the peer-to-peer network, for engineers, it's easy to think of. The first reason is we need to make the peer-to-peer network being decentralized.
Exactly.
Decentralized website. But the second thing we need kind of Stellar kind of partner is that we not only need the peer-to-peer video conferencing capability, we also need peer-to-peer money flow capability.
And that's where Stellar comes in.
Exactly. That's not really, because at that time, maybe I gave people a wrong impression. I thank Jed because we need everybody. I was trying to...
it makes sense to me, Ron, in every way, because the research I did led me to actually banks with Stellar, for example. So clearly it's a financial platform. And what had happened initially was there's a lot of email research that Stellar, indirectly had done, but particularly Onchain had been doing, which you'd be aware of. And they were investigating peer-to-peer means of transacting financially. And there's no question that's going to be part of Stellar's plan with this system.
Because if we're building a decentralized web, right? And given all the data sharing, the streaming, but we need money to be decentralized. Not only, Neil, they were doing the ID being decentralized.
Right.
Money needs also to be decentralized because we're talking about the world.
Exactly.
We're talking about the internet, right?
So essentially, it's a payment rail concept. It's the facilitator.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Because
some people we're in China. Some people in the U.S. Some people in Philippines.
Well, it was pretty obvious
Brazil
because of Jed's relationship with Ripple as well and its initial design. But because it's become a much more centralized system, it makes sense that Stellar is something that's of value because it's designed much more to be that decentralized payment rail system.
Yeah.
So I found that very
So
interesting.
actually we should emphasize more about the decentralized money instead of
Absolutely.
misleading people think
Yes.
the open source community.
Yes. Well, I think you did a great job just then, really.
Yeah.
Would it be okay, Ron, if I went through a couple of questions, because there's a few things I wanted to clarify with you, and there's a few audience questions as well. So we'll get started with some of these. The first one I want to ask you was, whilst most devices are Android in China, having looked at some of the stats, will Elastos, the C++ iterations that you've presently done on the Android for security reasons, will that extend, do you think, to non-Android devices as well?
But on the other hand, to build a dApps, build a platform for dApps,
it's a big
really
job.
It is. It's not just it's not a lab demo in the college.
Well, that's
right?
what I've been saying on my YouTubes as well, Ron, is that it was obvious to me right from the outset that this is a very longitudinal program. This is a very longitudinal project. And because of it, I wanted to ask you this specifically, but in my opinion, it seems like it's very unlikely that there are many competitors, if any others at the moment, in this decentralized operating system space that's directly connected with blockchain. Because of the magnanimity of it, because of the amount of time that's been required and the key technological prowess that you have, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's likely that there are many people working on something like this or have been for so long?
I don't think so. Because
I don't think so either.
Definitely, there are big corporations may have something in their war chest, but open source community-wise, it's unlikely to have this scale of build-up, right? All open source, 100%, and assemble them together in. We plan to assemble everything together in about basically 2018, 1 year.
It's very exciting when you launch the actual network next year in December. I remember you saying that. At San Francisco.
We're planning because we're going to launch the testnet December.
Yeah.
So by around December of next year, we hope to have all the open source there. Anybody can purchase a mining machine and mining the thing in their garage, because we are building a decentralized web. Currently, of course, Neo, Ontology, or Onchain, they're all our very close allies and partners.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's not exclusive.
No.
Just like when we have internet, when we have a phone network, you have AT&T issue IDs, you have China Mobile's issue IDs, right? The internet is for everyone. It's not exclusive for only like China Mobile IDs and no AT&T IDs. Actually, we're going to support all kinds of IDs.
Right. And that's what interests, I think, for Neo investors, for example. What is very interesting is the Neo contract relationship. So let's talk about that, because you did allude to that in the San Francisco talk as well. So what's the direct Neo contract relationship, and how does that work?
That's first of all, we have to clarify some basic concepts. And in your first talk about Elastos and your introduction to Elastos, actually you mentioned so far most people build their dApps directly on top of blockchain.
Exactly.
Which I mean, definitely
like
there are drawbacks.
Let's talk about Ethereum, because
I don't want to name. I don't want to name names because it's a common thing, right?
Absolutely.
But if you got a CryptoKitty, definitely that kind of a machine, single machine, won't be able to support the ecosystem. That said, because given what we're doing, we are building a decentralized web. So we need websites, we need browsers.
Exactly.
We need the virtual machines running, right? Both on the cell phone and also the virtual machines in the cloud, which is the backend.
And this is some of the things that you're building. You're literally building.
Right, we are building. Actually, that's our strength, right? To build the virtual machine, can we build a C++ virtual machine?
Right.
And
which is also, for the viewers to know, that's a very complex process in itself, because virtual machines are not easy to build. So for you guys to be able to do that in this respect is, again, quite a significant thing.
Right. Basically, that's with the 17 years of experience lies on, right? Lies upon. And that said, if you think about the traditional, I mean, the old web, current web, you got a browser, you got a server, you got a portal.
Yep.
And the portal is also managed by one single enterprise or organization, or individual, right? Do we have a trust? Yeah, we have somewhat trust with Amazon, Google,
but in a centralized way.
In a centralized way. So can we have a website built on top of consensus? We have a website, we could have more trust. Even though I may not look into the website source code, but if I listen to someone, I believe some opinion leader and techie and telling me, okay, that supply chain website is really behind it. There are 20 organizations. They have a consortium. They have consensus. They vote. They have a blockchain to do the ledger.
Right.
So then we have more trust to that supply chain website.
And if we move across to that comment you were talking about before about not operating directly on the blockchain, because that is the key difference that you are doing. So let's talk about that.
So we are not really looking at consensus or that's kind of a too abstract technology terminology.
Right.
We just want consumers see there's a website where you can have more trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So to consumers, it's just another website. It's really not much from the current website they have.
They want it to be quite seamless.
That one, right? Because just some of them is you can have more trust in them, right?
Exactly.
Because it's a web service. So that's where when they do like on-chain, they're doing like a multiple consensus.
Yes.
I don't believe in single consensus built on single blockchain.
And because they're not operating on that blockchain, that frees up the capabilities of, again, we talked about this previously with cloud technology as one example, which you alluded to in San Fran. There's so much innovation happening in that space with regard to how cloud technology can facilitate independent centralized businesses. But how that gets decentralized is through you. So can we talk about that? Like how are you going to do, because I really want to talk about apps.
What is an app? Mobile app, like a WeChat, like YouTube,
AliCloud and...
Right. Because you get apps, right? Because if you see the mobile apps, and of course there's some local apps like a calculator, there's, right?
Right.
Those are the pure local apps, but currently the local apps are really a rare near extinction kind of species now. I mean, we were talking about 20, 30 years ago when we built apps on the PC, they're all like local apps.
Right.
But now when we talk about mobile apps, most of them actually are mobile interconnection apps, social apps.
So essentially, you're going to support decentralized apps, and you're going to do that.
Right, but then when you talk about mobile apps, actually, you can imagine there's a big enterprise or organization behind it.
Massive.
Like WeChat or Facebook. Right. We talk to each other, right? You send me a message, I send you a photo back.
Right.
And should we have another third-party intermediary, in the back, right? That's maybe we do, maybe we don't.
But
decentralized meaning.
And as you get more mass adoption, because you're going to, there's no question that coupled with Neo's relationship, you're going to get more adoption. But as that evolves and as the applications become more in number with Elastos, because they will build, isn't it likely that some of these centralized cloud technology systems that will move more across to this decentralized model, using more like something like Elastos? Because if the market goes that way, and it's advantageous for efficiency, surely they can see that. Surely these companies that can benefit from that.
We don't want to argue either way, because definitely, as I said before, there's a need for department stores, and people want to have the
but if it's
confidence.
If it's more efficient for those companies, though, Ron, for those companies to actually run on a decentralized model, which we know now is, and if they're maintaining that centralized system for even things like apps, then surely they're going to look at and redress that and say, well, hang on, there's costs involved here we're paying. We don't need to pay if we use a different model.
But they are also monetized through so-called big data, right? They collect everybody's user behavior, consumer behavior.
They do.
Then they monetize on that, do a better advertisement for, then that's fine.
Right.
But also there's a need because of this decentralized web. Definitely there are a need, let's say we chat with each other. Why should another party
benefit from it?
Eardropping on us in the middle, right?
Exactly.
Because there we definitely foresee there's a opportunity for decentralized YouTube, decentralized Twitter, decentralized Facebook, decentralized WeChat for that matter.
So given those sort of things, Ron, as well, I mean, you talked about the idea of decentralized YouTube, and we know that there's other work being done by people like Dan Larimer with things like DTube.
Yeah.
So are you actually considering platforms like that within Elastos framework, or would that be more something you outsource as a capability that could run on Elastos?
Well, I mean, think about it. If you run a decentralized YouTube, but you need um, video capabilities and
Which you're
streaming
providing.
capabilities. Well, which we're providing. That's why we want to invite everybody in the world, all the every developers in the world to because it's all open source to help us to improve the performance. So if we're talking here and if we have millions of viewers watching, the only thing is I do one upstreaming from my home to like a Lambda server in Amazon somewhere, basically. Then they do the multicasting down, the downstream. And so they can charge a service fee for that, but then there's no data residue because the data is end-to-end encrypted. All the viewers should have a public key, all the keys to decipher the video, and then basically the Lambda server is providing a pipe, right? They charge for the pipe fee, which is definitely reasonable,
right?
But we don't want them to log to tape our video conference if we don't give them permission to.
Exactly, and that's where the permissions come in through the Onchain connection. Given that you're essentially the operating system platform for the decentralized world right now, and as you said, you're the leading force for that worldwide. Globally, you are the first blockchain-related application-based operating system. But
we hope so.
I think that's quite accurate, given that we can't see anything else coming forward right now. But in terms of current interest, whether it be from open source or have you garnered much support yet in business interest from from other sources? Because I've heard on the grapevine that there's already interest from different
there are of course. So we as I said, we plan to build a prototype of this smart web. So you can kind of imagine 2018 would be somewhat like 1992.
Right.
At that time.
So it's really the beginning.
The really very beginning. Even it's even before Netscape. It's just Mosaic era, right?
And can
we
you
have
foresee,
a rough prototype?
And given that, Ron, can you foresee in the next year business appending to or utilizing the operating system? Because you'd know more than anyone if there's interest already.
Yes, because of for the traditional even for traditional system software like operating systems or internet, there are some old guards, old veterans kind of start to aging like me, but they are kind of missing out on the new wave of opportunities such as blockchain. If you see how much Bitcoin has gone up and stuff,
crazy.
So it kind of reminded us the web of early 90s, right?
Right.
So we are definitely looking for key alliances.
Yes.
And for those people, for if you think a mobile app or mobile, somewhat like a platform kind of app, like YouTube, actually not only it's an app, it's also a platform.
Right.
In its own way, because it's just not the system platform,
exactly.
Right? It's not the internet platform, but it's a platform on its own right, because they give IDs and they have many followers.
And given that, Ron, do you think you'd be able to support, with all the technological knowledge you have of Elastos, would you be able to support something like a platform or multiple platforms, not just apps?
Right. That's what actually we intend to do, to sign up a few of those
platforms,
mobile platform kind of apps.
And let's talk about the market as well, Ron. This app market, including the platforms, is very big. Even in the US alone, we're talking, I would imagine, billions of dollars. So the market that is there for a facility like you to house these apps. And given that you're the first one to lead the way, that must be exciting for you.
Yes, very much so, because actually, we've been doing this similar technology, as I said, the operating system was virtual machine OS, because the old OS was a multi-process, multitasking OS.
Right.
Now it's easy to understand now. The modern operating system should be operating system of multiple virtual machines, right?
Okay.
And secondly, our second incarnations, we're supposed to do an industrial IoT. Definitely, we need to have the virtual machines run across the network instead of running on one single piece of hardware.
Right.
So that's the second incarnation. Of course, the third incarnation would be, instead of operated by an enterprise, right? All the virtual machines from the mobile device to the cloud server, all managed by enterprise. Can we make it a decentralized web?
Exactly.
So that's the third incarnation we're talking about.
And that's the thing you were talking about in San Fran as well, Ron, with smart web. And I like that terminology because it links, obviously, your premise with the smart economy.
Or smartphone, because smartphone is a phone that runs apps.
It's clever.
And because, as I said, our first incarnation was we were building phones.
Right.
A feature phone, a smartphone. Smartphone is a phone that runs apps.
Right.
Smart web is the web that runs apps. The last web, the existing web is a web of data, web of information. We click a URL, we get some information. Through social networks, we send only photos, movies, and
I see.
And so information. Can we send games?
And having talked to you, it's very clear, so I can make it very clear for all of the listeners, is that Neo will still operate its dApps. It'll still have the capability to be a robust system in which businesses can append onto its blockchain. That's the dApps. But in terms of the apps, that's where you come in, because you'll be able to facilitate off-chain app applications or applications for a vast number of businesses right at the tail end. And arguably, it would be seamless. So from the end user's point of view, they may not even know all of the processes underneath that are running right to the blockchain level. They'll just know that they're running an app.
Right. Because new kinds of dApps basically we're complementary of each other. As I said, there are some websites.
With your plan, because as you know, the submissions for dApp applications for Neo is quite open source and quite easy in comparison to many, because there's so many different languages they can choose. Will that be something similar in terms of someone applying to utilize Elastos as an app application facility? Will it be quite easy to do that, do you think? In the means in which they can become part of the ecosystem?
Yeah, we actually, the virtual machines we're building, we try to be a loosely coupled framework. And we basically what we did is, first of all, we translated all Java class library into C++. Wow. So we were going to give them a more modern programming environment, which the developers kind of used to. Right. They used to program in Android Java. Now they have a C versions of Android Java equivalent.
Okay.
Right. So if they know there's a class like a stream, file, big number, database, and websites they could use.
Right.
And other than languages have, C has a different, slightly different calling convention. Other than that, it's pretty much the same programming paradigm.
It sounds so exciting because it's going to be quite easy, for the people to utilize this system once it gets up and running next year.
Right, and we also hope, like for JavaScript, for Java programmers, we try to make them as compatible to Android as possible.
Right.
I actually showed a demo phone in the meetup, which actually could achieve
That's amazing.
Pretty much the Android compatibility.
That's amazing. And what's interesting also is that I read an article that was in France where Onchain had presented similar, they were showing phones at on stage presentation, but that was more to do with capabilities on email for finance, for making payments. So again, they're also developing abilities like that, or capabilities, which are exciting because that was peer-to-peer as well, which again relates to Stellar. But I wanted to ask you as well about, interconnections with, let's just go there. Let's just talk about Bitcoin for a moment and the Bitcoin family. The reason why I wanted to ask you this is because in San Fran, and many people want to know, what is going on with the hashing power capabilities of Elastos in terms of you're going to have mining capabilities enfranchised or enabled through Elastos once it's set up. So can you talk about that more? And the reason why I wanted to go there is because in my research, I could see that Fen Hang, or Han Feng, who was actually a speaker at the summit in Hong Kong, and he was representing Elastos in that presentation. But many of the speakers, if not most, were representative of the Bitcoin group. And so there's no question in my mind that, given that Fen Hang is an advisor to Tencent, he is a key member of Elastos. And because you mentioned about their mining capabilities, they're going to be enabled through Elastos. Let's go there. Let's unpack that. And can you please explain what that means and what the likelihood is of that?
The Elastos chain actually is a public chain through POW consensus.
Yep.
proof of work. Actually, we do merge mining with the Bitcoin mining machines.
Okay.
And so then we hope the miners could mine Bitcoin and Elastos coin at the same time if they wish to, if they update their software.
That's interesting. So let's rewind, because obviously NEO is a delegated Byzantine fault tolerant system. It's not designed to be forked. It's designed to be stable, etc. But if you have a proof of work, how does that work in your algorithm? How are you proof of work in relation to the generation 1 blockchains? How does that work?
We are actually working with the Bitmain together, because they were yes, and actually we work together to. It's also because they have quite a few engineers working on their mining software and not only maintain the stability of their mining machines, but also they do research and to improve the technology.
And honestly, Ron, it was kind of obvious because he was there at the launch. He's been involved from the outset with Elastos. Jihan Wu has.
Yes.
And the thing that makes me wonder, though, about the capacities that Elastos are going to provide, it's going to be advantageous for anyone who's doing POW mining. But particularly, given the interest of those people at Summit, I do want to just go one step further and argue that there were a lot of people from Bitcoin Cash there. And I don't want you to say, because you can't really speak of that, but I noticed that. I really noticed it. And Jihan Wu is a very significant advocate for Bitcoin Cash. And their technology is very different to its counterparts. Let's just not go too much and get people freaked out. But I did notice that, honestly, Ron. And I'm sure Jihan Wu can see the benefit of Elastos. Let's say that.
That's put it this way. That's one of our joint co-development, and it's an attempt to improve the mining machines' future. Basically, it's a trial and see whether we can have more ledgers sharing this mining capability instead of have them hash power only work for Bitcoin. Could they, more ledgers sharing this hash power? So this is a one direction of research.
Okay. And can you see Bitmain benefiting from Elastos directly?
Well, as I said, at least that's a research attempt, right, to explore new opportunities, to set up something, set up an example. Then instead of people competing with each other, can we all collaborating with that kind of, because still POW, the hash power is the simplest, and in a way, I'm no expert, and
it's proven.
It's proven, stable, and in a way fair, right? Because so that's a attempt we are now working full-heartedly behind.
Okay.
But on the other hand, this smart web really we're not exclusive, because definitely will allow different entities like we currently have only Elastos main public chain underneath this web. But definitely we are going to have the interface for multiple public chains underneath this web.
You'll be essentially very pluggable, in that there'll be a pluggable aspect in that people can tap into your service.
Correct. If people don't like Bitmain mining machines or public chains, currently, as I said, we work with the NEO and we work with Onchain. But let's say if someone want to put the NEO public chain underneath, which could be also adaptable and possible.
I think that's where many people were sort of perhaps misguided, because obviously the San Fran meetup was specifically NEO, and NEO being its own entity, its own public blockchain, is not on-chain. It is unique.
Yeah, true. That's as I said. I mean, basically, three parties together, because Hongfei was there, Li Jun was there, right? And Jad was there. But then somehow, because we have a peer-to-peer network, we have a public chain. Actually, our public chain is actually different from the public chain. And
but I did want to
collaborate with the Onchain more.
That's very interesting, honestly, Ron. But I wanted to ask you, in terms of NEO contracts, how does NEO benefit from the Elastos and on-chain relationship? I mean, I could explain, I could give you a thesis on why I know it will, because of the NEOX capability. I know it will. But directly, is there a NEO contract?
At this point, we haven't had a detailed meeting yet, but just basically at the strategic level, because Da Hongfei was our angel investor.
Well, he is the CEO of both. He's the big
maybe
boss.
Onchain, right. And also because we anticipate after we build this smart web, we're going to have a consensus kind of websites.
Yes, and there will be that cross capability.
So at the strategic level, we definitely see the synergy there, but we haven't had the bandwidth to work on it yet.
Well, that's exciting.
We have no detailed design.
So the relationships between all three of the entities within the network of Neo, that's going to unfold as you guys unfold until launch next year into the net. Sorry, not the mainnet, but until your interface is public and usable, all these interconnections are going to become more apparent.
Right.
Well, I wanted to go through a couple of questions because I'm sure you have a lot to do in your weekend, but there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. In San Fran, you were discussing that you would like to, the internet will be essentially banned altogether with the capabilities of Elastos. Do you mean by that it's just not going to be relevant to utilize the internet in this respect?
No, actually, we're building a new territory, or we call it a special economic zone on top of the existing internet.
Okay.
So people still prefer the old anonymous internet or the whatever the legacy software they want to use, and we're definitely not saying you couldn't do it. We're not banning any of those. We're just building some new peer-to-peer network on top of the internet.
Right.
So especially you can think of we're building the new browser, new macro websites.
Just in terms of Ella, if we want to talk about that, many people aren't quite sure about how the token release is going to work, how the Ella token is going to operate throughout the ecosystem as well. So could you talk about the December token release, and can you tell us a little bit more explicitly exactly how that's going to work, to your knowledge?
Basically, Ella is, as I said, we are building our own public chain, very similar to Bitcoin. Okay. So the mining, the ledger, and you can think of it just a variation of Bitcoin, right?
Okay.
Because of the Bitcoin open source and so many people are familiar with the Bitcoin source code.
Right.
And on top of that,
and essentially, sorry to interrupt, but essentially going to have partnerships with key stakeholders in things like mining. That's clear. But you're also going to have key relationships with people like Neo and the Onchain team. So you've got your fingers in many pies, but underpinning your own, I will make it clear, you're your own public blockchain. Is that fair to say?
Right.
And you are underpinned by a POW. Is that okay? I did not know that.
Yes. So then basically we have Ella. You can think of it's a yet another coin.
So it's mineable.
Spin-off.
Will Ella be mineable?
Cousin of Bitcoin. Yeah, it's a mineable.
Wow.
It's a mineable. And so you can say it's a derivative of Bitcoin, just with a different name.
Wow.
And
but it's going to have a business context. It's going to have a real-world application through an operating system mechanism.
Yeah, because there, of course, on top of that, we're going to build ID chain, digital asset side chains, and the fundamentals of Ella is we're kind of simulating a smart economy. Basically, we're simulating the GDPs of this special economic zone.
Right.
If you trade ebooks, you trade movies, you trade games, peer-to-peer, of course, buying, selling, you build up your digital assets. And then we can imagine, I'm not an economist, but then how do we calculate the GDP of this economic zone?
Exactly.
Say, if the GDP is on par to some small country in the world, can you say, the fundamental of Ella, the strength of that is comparable,
exactly.
like a dollar to, not really dollar, but then, that fiat currency,
what fascinates
dollar
me,
to dollar exchange, right?
What fascinates me, I'm just fascinated by what you're saying, Ron, because it's clear that you are a proponent of the original Generation 1 blockchain. That's clear in its fundamentals because you're a proponent of it being proven. So I suppose is that the reason why you chose the POW to utilize to use Ella, because you could have chosen other models.
Because because we've been through the histories and the simpler, right? Keep it simple and stupid,
right?
And because we don't believe we think those smart contracts or like a programmable database,
right?
Like you have a database, hard featured, right? Featured database or hard coded database.
Right.
Now you have a programmable database, like
Right.
a store procedures kind of a database.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're not really going to build so-called dApps. You may at most have some special. You have smart contract. Even smart contract, we want to build it on top of the web instead of directly on the blockchain.
But what you're
so
saying...
for that matter, do we want to make the blockchain? Actually, we want to hide blockchain, the public chain altogether. On our chain, we're going to have ID sidechain. We're going to have the digital asset sidechain because the IDs will recycle every year.
No one will see that.
No one will see that, right? And digital assets like copyright will run out in 70 years. 70 years may be too long. It'll run out in 7 years.
It's fascinating.
Because those were the digital assets properties or the website's properties, right? Because we will register a website called rongchen.id.
Okay.
If I don't pay, I don't get that nice name, right?
Right.
And,
what you're saying makes complete sense to me now that we've talked, because I can see why the imperative is for you to have on-chain. Because of its delegated fault tolerance protocol, that's essential for that part of the trust. But because of that, you don't need to necessarily have it for Elastos. You don't need to have that same model, because you're sort of enabling the trust mechanism through these relationships with on-chain that you've established. And that's the key aspect of the business component of what you'll be able to do, where you were talking about you'll be able to hide some of these aspects of the ID. That's part of how you'll do it.
Because from the above the web level, all you see is just like a operating system. You see an ID to log in. Right. And you see the website. I mean, the reason why the website ID is valid is because they're paying the DNS names, right?
Right.
And other than that, I mean, because we want to make it pluggable to different kind of public chains, different ID systems, and we don't want to expose any of those special characteristics of each ID system, right? You always see it's kind of very much like operating system or the web.
So how will businesses, when they move in to utilize your service as an app platform, how will they have to pay through Ella? Or
no, you can imagine in two ways. For example, if you register DNS right now, you register a website called rongchen.id or Dropbox.id, that kind of thing. You want to register, of course, that website will be available across the web, across the world. Put it in another word, right?
Right.
And that we want people to pay Ella for registrations. But on the other hand, you're hosting the website yourself, in the macro website. If you want to charge folks fiat money like Alipay or PayPal, that's your choice. It's free, and we don't charge any of that. Of course, it depends on, Visa charge you some fee, which is not us, right?
No, that's right.
Visa charge you 5% or 3%. That's their business.
Right.
So actually, the web is open source. Basically, the web's running autonomously. The web is running by the miners, by the decentralized carriers. I mean, no one. At least no companies behind this.
And that's
this
where,
web, right?
And that's where
no one is collecting.
Right, and that's where that payment rail comes in, being able to interact and utilize Ella in that respect.
Yeah, even like if you pay fiat money, like if you in China you want to pay some American service, right? You're going through Stellar, kind of money chain, decentralized money chain, so you can get some business from the macro websites of US, right?
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
Across the web. And there we don't really dictate any of the policies.
Right. Well, just on that note, could you tell us a little bit more about reflections? Because you talked about that in San Francisco as the smart routers. Is that a really big part of Elastos?
It's extremely critical technology. Basically, that's the technology C++ were lacking.
Okay.
Because that's the reason why Microsoft wanted to do C#. That's why Java is Java.
Okay.
Because Java, C#, all the modern languages have something called a reflection capability, and by the suffix built into them. If with reflection, we can do the translation between languages automatically.
That's amazing.
So one language like Java calling C, you don't have to write anything, actually translate back.
So it's like a modem. It just does that for everything.
Right, because if we have C with a reflection capability, of course, then the translation would be automatic. Right. Not only between languages, they're automatic, then because different languages actually live in different virtual machines, right. Like Java lives in Java virtual machine, JavaScript lives in browsers.
I see.
And C, we're building a C++ versions of virtual machine. Right. So we're actually living in different processes. And if we can translate between them, actually, we could make them across the internet.
So that's going to make it more cross-compatible with many things as well.
Right, but the applications or services could be implemented in different languages, and also it's agnostic to operating systems.
That's incredible.
Physical operating system underneath. Like Java is running on Linux, Java is on Windows,
wow.
Right?
And you can cater
Java is on Mac. But then the Java applications, really, do they know their right. Java applications that have no idea right. They're running actually on Linux?
That's amazing.
Or on Windows, right?
I think you've clarified that very well, Ron. And just in relation to that, I really wanted to ask you this, given your experience in Microsoft. And I want to explain this just for all the listeners as well. Onchain has a direct correlation with Hyperledger. They are one of the members. And as you'd know, one of the key founders of Hyperledger is IBM. Also, I've noticed through my research that there are some links between Elastos, whether it be just from meetings privately and publicly, with Microsoft, particularly Microsoft Azure as well, and R3, which is a very important banking consortium. So can you talk a little bit more about your interlinks with consortiums, particularly private consortiums, or interests at that level with Elastos?
Yeah, right. I contacted some of them.
Yep.
Like I definitely see, as I said, the like Hyperledger.
Yep.
I talked to some of them and the Hyperledger team members.
And R3.
So we visited R3, but I don't think we're in any detail. Detailed discussions yet.
No.
Because as I said, we do foresee there are websites running by consensus.
Absolutely.
And if you see Hyperledger, you don't have to have a coin for the consensus website.
No, you don't.
It's just giving people more confidence, more trust for the website. So
and what's exciting about that too, Ron, is that is enterprise markets, And
right.
Again, I'm really excited about your connection with Onchain, because Onchain are heavily situated in that direction. They must be, because that's the premise for their whole company.
Sure.
So that's
because
really good.
I definitely would like to see our relations moving forward with like Onchain or Hyperledger in that direction for the consensus kind of websites.
Yeah.
And
I think it's very probable, let's say, at this stage, given the direction. But it will be exciting to see in the future. We don't want to speculate. But certainly, given that you are what you are the decentralized operating system, the leading the world, they're going to be paying attention. And I'm sure you can see that. They're going to be paying attention.
Basically, this is a project of the world, because as
it really is.
My thinking is that the reason why Linux is what Linux it is, actually, it's not just Linus, a single person.
Yeah.
It's actually a symbol, right? So just everyone chipped in.
And what's exciting, especially coming from you, Ron, is that had people have realized the magnitude of Linux in '92, and seen the value.
At least I overlooked. Right, I overlooked several things.
Well, I think would you agree we're in a good time in history to see the potential of things like this as well? This could be the 2017 equivalent. Could be, theoretically, in that one day we could look back and laugh at this, Ron, and say, well, look at what we've achieved, look what you've achieved, given that you started, 17 years ago, but particularly now in 2017, interestingly, 17 years since you started, as a 17th year, as the beginnings in relation to blockchain technology. Because that decentralized modality, that functionality, is really what is going to be, exciting as the innovation for, the future. And as we've talked about before, bubbles, many people think about them as bad, but bubbles indicate innovation every single time. And would you agree?
Yes, definitely. Because at that time I was doing 95. I was doing Internet Explorer. And I thought that's a hardcore high tech, right? And people were creating companies, setting up websites, and of course, there's so many
all of that.
followers of VCs, and their valuations like 10 times higher than this hardcore
Yes.
techies, right?
Yes.
So at that time, it was like frowned
Yes, frowned
upon
upon.
them because saying,
Yes.
hey, how much do they know, right?
Right. Right.
But then, so now just really it's a shame on me.
And it's interesting.
Overlooked.
I love talking about this because we need to talk about I guess the open source mechanism. I just need to go there with you, and I respect that you can't comment on this. But Ethereum initially, when it started, it was idealistic. It wanted to open up a framework for people to circumvent authority. That can be said factually. But because of that, many DApp applications, or many dApps, I should say, they were not. There was no mechanism to really evaluate the validity or the viability of some of these companies, and so many of them were problematic, and that's just factual. So in that respect, let's talk Elastos. But given that there's a potentially an infinite number of apps that could utilize your service, your blockchain, how are you going to manage that? How are you going to manage it? And can these applications also have tokens?
Well, definitely they can have their own tokens. I think the blockchain is a very novel, innovative. I think of a blockchain as a computer, which is a very novel, very innovative computer, which never existed before 2009.
Right.
So given that understanding with this new kind of computer and how to write applications and what's the implications to the web, to the world, that's where it really deserves a lot more research from colleges and research institute. But so far, we only see bubbles and small startups. So I kind of urge the schools doing more research on what's the impact of this new computer.
Absolutely.
And secondly, for definitely will make it much easier for applications to issue their own tokens. Because whether it's for utility token or security token, we're not policymakers. We're not those KYC organizations.
And given the magnitude of your plan, because let's be honest, Ron, it's a big one. What you're planning to do is big. Is your token system going to be quite large to accommodate for the size?
White paper basically saying we're going to issue 33 million.
That's very low.
Alice.
That's very small.
No, it's less than 2 times of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has 21 million.
Yeah, and that's very low. Which is exciting.
It is. I mean, but comparing to some ICOs, they have
the majority are, NEO, for example, is 100 million. So 33 is, that's an exciting number for investors, because.
So it's not too big a number in this arena.
No, it's not.
And
not at all.
And also, we anticipate we're going to issue inflation of 4% every year to compensate the money, the wallet being lost.
Right.
And also compensate a little bit of inflation in this smart economy.
Right.
And basically, we're going to give a majority chunk of it to the miners and decentralized carriers
to support
the
system,
to support them, to make them worth their while to host
That's interesting.
Decentralized Skype.com, right? Who is hosting?
I see.
Of course, the mining machine miners should be rewarded, and who is going to host the decentralized versions of Skype.com, right? Because we have to reward them.
So in theory, could some of these other proof of work models somehow directly support Elastos, or is it just indirectly? Because it sounds like there's some direct links, like there's some direct support happening from, for example, Bitmain's interest. They don't have their own blockchain necessarily, but they are going to benefit from your blockchain.
We are still still early to see what's our, because we definitely working together right now. But then, to what extent economically, how they benefit from this merge mining, I'm not clear.
Well, did Bitmain, Jihanwu's company, did they invest initially to support Elastos? Because that's my supposition.
Actually, Bitmain is our angel investor.
Right, I thought so. Which makes a lot of sense.
It's on white paper.
Yeah, but I guess I want to ask you too, some of the viewers have asked about the size of your team as well, Ron. So let's talk about the numbers of your team and what's the plan for your team in the next year.
When we for the past few years, 5 years, actually I had a team of 150, 160 people, engineers.
Wow.
Working for Elastos, for the industrial IoT, for the smart router, for the smartphone, for the
That's huge.
macro websites.
That's really big.
That was, but then that was until end of basically a year ago, right? Until a year ago, then we start to.
Was that a funding issue as well, like having to find other funds?
Yeah. Okay. Then, but then, so that was the basically the last life, and from like August, we did a private crowdfunding of Elastos Foundation. So, but then the right now the Elastos is funded by the crowdfunding. They're very much like other projects, like Ethereum or EOS kind of projects.
So you had a pre-sale. You had your pre-sale.
We had a pre-sale,
and that was
in August.
Yes, and then are you having? Let's talk the other sales as well. Many people want to know what that'll entail and how they'll access this next phase of public sale. Is that going to be in December?
Somewhere towards the January.
Okay.
I mean, probably we're going to finish it before January ends.
So will people be able to buy Ella at that point in the public's domain?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's exciting.
And so we're going to have to do another crowdfunding, so then we can have more international
investors.
Yeah.
And is it likely to be the last one before then it becomes,
Yeah, this is it. Right. This is it. And
wow.
so
that's exciting. Many people are waiting for this, Ron. Many people are waiting for this. Many people who like the project. I mean, they want to know, because for them, money is paramount to everything, and if they like this project, we don't give financial advice, of course, but they want to know when they can look at this project, and I think that's the thing we want to be really clear about. So January is a time when we can, well, for those people who are interested in the Elastos project, they can then look at being part of the beginnings.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for the next year, Ron, in terms of?
Yeah, next year would be, I'm looking forward to it. 2018 is it, right?
It's a big year.
It's a big year because for me, that'll be the 18 years. 18 years and make a boy a man.
Amazing.
And
I like it. I like that.
But
the boy matures.
So we're kind of looking forward to it.
I'm amazed that you did this initially on your own. Honestly, full credit. Because of the magnitude, now we know what Elastos is. I wanted to talk to you about how have you designed the framework of your token structure to be able to support that via payments, meaning how much have you stored for the team, for the project?
We now, according to our white paper, we reserve about 3.5 million.
Right, which is quite a lot given that you only have 33.
Yes. And then, that's 10%. The pool. That's the pool we use to encourage our own employees
and your innovation, your connections
to our partners.
Right.
And also, we are looking forward. We're building these platforms like macro websites, the Onchain, the ID system, the digital asset chains, and smart routers and the tools.
Right.
And
I think it's an incredible project.
Middle of next year, we'll start to encourage people to do migrations, to move their existing mobile internet applications, like especially those kind of somewhat platform-like mobile applications, onto our new economic zone.
So this is where you could actually really steal some business.
Yeah, no. They have two business.
Okay.
We have no interest in their existing business on the internet, right?
Right.
We pay for them to move from the centralized world to the smart economy.
Wow.
And so they can have a decentralized versions of, say, Telegram, quote unquote, and Twitter, quote unquote, right? So as I said, there are definitely more than 10, 20 of them doing this social chat kind of applications, social, video website kind of applications. Right. Quite a few of them are struggling in the internet world. Right. And if they're willing to open source for the decentralized version, we're going to pay for the source code. We're paying for them for the moving
So
cost.
you are really focused on the marketing transition as well, like marketing to make
Right,
that
and
transition.
then we're going to hope maybe we'll join forces with existing VCs, right, to seeking professional advices and take a small
Well,
share of the
I sincerely hope
the
more
new
people.
business.
I sincerely hope more people like myself also get the word out there to hopefully connect with some of these big businesses that can potentially utilize your service, because they're going to be paying attention as this becomes more prevalent. But I wanted to ask you as well, many people suppose, or very incorrectly, that because businesses like yourself evolved in China, they were developed, that they are predominantly a Chinese system for a Chinese market. Would you argue that's not the case and it's purely designed to be a global system?
Which is not the case. I'll argue for that. Personally, it's first of all source codes are open.
Right.
Are open.
Yep.
We do at the beginning, the first incarnation of this project. There's a government funding, research funding for TDS CDMA, and the second incarnation we do have investment from Foxconn.
Sure.
But now we are on our third life now. It's
Sure.
completely open source, and we definitely encourage people of the world, developers of the world, to use this platform.
It's like you said,
and
you came back from the dirt, and now you're really trying to build up your global standing.
Yeah, and also we're forming our presentation in the Silicon Valley in the United States. We're forming a team there. We mount.
Is that with Fei? Is that with Fei Li as well? She's part of that team.
Yes. So she is now the first.
She's excellent.
Paid on our payroll.
Yes, I've talked to her. She's very bright.
And also have a few people interested. And I personally will spend a big chunk of my time in the United States
next year.
Wow. And to develop the Elastos community for the world, because we want the documentations in English, we want the marketing materials in English, we want everything, right, to have a international sense.
Well, Rong, I want to thank you sincerely. I think this has been a very, very comprehensive interview, and it's a great sort of ending point to know that next year is going to be very exciting. You're moving to the US for much of your time next year to dedicate your research and knowledge to open up the Western market. Elastos is a universal project. It has global potential. It was born by a very determined man who did it for 17 years. 18th year is your year of maturity. I'm genuinely excited about your project. I only talk about projects that I believe in as well, and I can see that it's something very beneficial for the future, not just for blockchain, but for just modes of communication. It's exciting. Sure. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the interview.
I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can talk again.
Same here. Yeah, we'll talk more.
Yeah, it was a great honor and privilege. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Thanks very much.